You know that feeling when you're just walking down a familiar street?
Like a route you've taken 100 times.
Right, exactly. And suddenly something just feels, I don't know, off, like a shadow falls at an angle that just doesn't make sense with where the sun is.
Yeah, or a traffic light cycles through its colors completely out of sequence. You know, stuttering like a skipped frame in a movie.
Yes. But normally you just blink and shake your head. You blame it on a lack of sleep and just keep walking.
Because our brains are biologically hardwired to smooth over those tiny inconsistencies, we crave a continuous, reliable reality.
You definitely do.
So when you face sensory input that breaks the rules of physics or logic, your mind basically works like an autocorrect feature. It edits out the errors in real time so you can go about your day without having, like, a localized existential crisis.
But what if you couldn't smooth it over? What if those little glitches started happening everywhere, all at once, to millions of people simultaneously?
That is the big question.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are so thrilled to have you with us because today's mission is to explore this really fascinating, mind-bending stack of sources from a publication called The Parallel Observer.
And just for some context on the source material, the Parallel Observer is the brainchild of John Grant. He's the founder and CEO of Inno8XR, which is pronounced Innovate-XR, by the way.
Right, Innovate-XR.
And the premise of this publication is what makes it so gripping. It takes the simulation hypothesis.
The theory that our universe is a computer-generated construct.
Exactly. But it treats it not as some late-night philosophical thought experiment. It treats it as a live breaking news event. They report on our reality as if it's actively glitching code.
And what makes this deep dive so compelling is that we aren't just tossing around abstract sci-fi concepts here. The sources in front of us are looking at very recent, very real-world stressors.
Tangible things.
Yeah. We're talking about extreme weather, massive cascading infrastructure failures, political shifts. But the Parallel Observer views all of these through the lens of a degrading digital infrastructure.
And honestly, whether or not you personally buy into the idea that we are living in a simulation, exploring these sources offers a profoundly useful framework.
It really does.
It gives us an entirely new vocabulary to understand the current collective anxiety and the societal friction we are all experiencing right now. It's a waving sense of a world that feels, well, increasingly senseless.
So let's start with the most immediate, tangible experiences described in the stack. There is this deeply unsettling piece from July 1st titled Heat Dome Disruption, Smart Thermostats Glitch as Celebrations Approached.
A very chaotic moment in time.
Unbelievably chaotic. Let's set the scene for you. The country is gearing up to celebrate its massive 250th 4th of July anniversary. Everyone is home, everyone is preparing, and temperatures are just soaring under this brutal, historic heat dome.
Right.
And right at that critical moment of maximum human activity, smart home devices, specifically interconnected thermostats across multiple different networks, they just start failing en masse.
And the source material frames this failure in a very specific way. It doesn't treat this as, a standard supply chain issue or just a localized grid failure.
Not at all.
The author labels it a systemic failure resulting from high friction. The article points out the statistical improbability of these distinct, insulated networks all crashing at the exact moment when maximum human attention and energy demand were occurring.
Okay, let's unpack this, because when I read that, it instantly made me think of a massive multiplayer video game.
Oh, that's a perfect comparison.
Right. If you've ever played an online game when a developer announces a huge holiday event, you know exactly what happens. Millions of players log onto the servers at the exact same second, and the server simply cannot handle the simultaneous processing requests.
Just buckles.
Exactly. The game starts rubber banding, characters freeze in midair, the environment stops loading textures. It is systemic stress. So if we look at these real-world events as systemic stress on a simulated server, how does that change the way we experience everyday inconveniences?
Well, it completely shifts our locus of control. When your smart thermostat breaks during a historic heat wave, the standard response is to get furious at the manufacturer, or the power company, or the government.
Sure, you want someone to blame.
Right. But if you view it through the lens of server lag, that localized anger transforms into this creeping existential unease. You stop wondering who manufactured the plastic box on your wall, and you start wondering what intelligence manufactured the reality that the box exists inside of.
Wow. Which brings us directly to the psychological fallout. Because the Parallel Observer covers this extensively in their June 29th pieces. There's heatwave challenges, stress healthcare resources, and caught in the web, the psychological fallout of unraveling reality.
Yeah, those pieces were heavy.
Because the toll of this heat dome wasn't just physical heat. Americans are facing this intense existential dread.
The sources detail a population dealing with a unique brand of modern anxiety. It's this growing suspicion that the climate, the economy, even the sweeping historical narratives they're supposed to be celebrating are all just programmed variables.
Programmed variables. That phrase carries so much weight. I mean, it implies an utter lack of organic existence. It means the heat wave isn't weather. It's a recalibration of an environmental slider by an unseen administrator.
And when you start viewing the world through that specific framework, the walls of the simulation begin to feel dangerously thin.
Extremely thin.
The sources point out that when healthcare resources get stretched beyond their limits during this heat wave, the people living through it aren't just experiencing a logistical triage crisis. To them, it feels like the code of their reality is actively degrading.
Like the underlying simulation simply doesn't have the processing power to keep every avatar healthy and cool at the same time.
Exactly, it's terrifying. You are essentially trapped in an environment that is failing to render properly.
But here is where the source material takes a really fascinating turn. When humans are confronted with overwhelming existential dread or a reality that feels programmed, our first coping mechanism usually isn't to write a white paper or open a spreadsheet.
No, it's art. Art is always our first instinct.
Exactly, it's art. Which bridges us directly into how creatives are processing this massive paradigm shift. The stack includes two deeply compelling articles on this cultural reaction.
The vibrant pixel. Artists explore the simulation hypothesis through diversity.
Yes, and the other one is Artistry and Anomaly. Phoenix creatives navigate a curious reality.
The focus on Phoenix creatives is particularly poignant here, I think. Given that they are geographically located right in the crucible of that extreme heat dome we were just talking about,
You're feeling the brunt of it.
they're the ones feeling the most friction from the system.
And the details in these articles are incredible. These local artists aren't just painting abstract landscapes. They are using their mediums, like digital art, physical installations, mixed media, to highlight what the sources call cracks in the sky.
It's such a visceral image.
It really is. The articles describe their work as a deliberate attempt to wake us up from the inside of the digital painting. There's one installation described in the source material that actually uses strobe lighting timed perfectly to the refresh rate of the human eye.
To create a physical stutter in the room.
Yes, it perfectly mimics a video rendering error. They are literally trying to recreate the feeling of a glitch in physical space.
What's fascinating here is that the role of the artist is shifting. They're moving from merely an observer of society to an observer of the system's architecture.
I like that framing.
Throughout history, artists have held a mirror up to human behavior. But in this scenario presented by the parallel observer, they are attempting to hold a mirror up to the construct of reality itself. They are mapping the boundaries of the digital cage.
I have to pause and inject a little skepticism here, though. I mean, I love the metaphor of waking us up from the inside of a digital painting, but aren't we giving these creatives a bit too much credit?
How do you mean?
Well, humans have been making art about the illusion of reality since, Plato's allegory of the cave. So are these artists essentially acting as literal debuggers of our reality, or are they just finding a really cool new aesthetic for age-old existential angst?
That is a vital distinction to make. But the sources suggest this is much more than just a new coat of paint on an old philosophical problem.
Okay, so what's the difference?
The argument here isn't that a painter is going to literally patch the universe's code. The argument is that these artists are actively trying to map the edges of our reality. They're providing the public with a much-needed visual and emotional vocabulary to process this massive shift.
A visual vocabulary, so they're giving us the images to understand what we're feeling.
Exactly. When your thermostat breaks during a 115-degree heat wave and the sky looks hazy and wrong, you feel that deep, creeping dread. But you might not have the language to articulate it. You just feel crazy.
Right, you just feel stressed out.
But then you walk into an art gallery in Phoenix and see an installation that perfectly physicalizes the feeling of a rendering error. It validates your internal experience. They are giving form to the glitch.
They are painting the server lag. I see what you mean. It grounds the anxiety in something observable. But, as powerful as that is, art is still inherently subjective. An installation about a glitch might make me feel validated, but it doesn't prove the glitch exists. And that is where our stack of sources takes a sharp, hard pivot. We move from the subjective world of art into the incredibly rigid, objective worlds of hard science and government policy.
Which is a very necessary evolution in this narrative. Because while the artists are painting the anomalies, academics and politicians are allegedly measuring and controlling them.
Let's look at the Tokyo University piece. This is from July 5th, titled, Dr. Nakamura's Anomaly Detection Method Sparks Debate at Tokyo University. Now, the source, I should say, makes a very specific point to note that this article achieved a substantially higher truth rating than the other pieces we've discussed.
And that truth rating detail completely alters the gravity of the reporting.
How so?
For context, the Parallel Observer utilizes a crowdsourced consensus algorithm. It's essentially a peer review system where verified users and experts assess the factual accuracy of the events being reported. So when the source notes that Nakamura's method received a high truth rating, it means we are moving past the philosophical phase of, is this real? We are entering the hard, observable science phase of, how does this actually work?
So Dr. Nakamura isn't a philosopher throwing around thought experiments in a coffee shop.
Not at all.
If an anomaly detection method is gaining real academic traction at a major global university, it means they have moved beyond metaphors, they have hypothesized a specific metric, and they are actively measuring physical reality against it to find structural deviations.
And the mechanics of it are absolutely fascinating. The source implies that Nakamura's team isn't just looking for weird shadows. They are applying the logic of computer science to quantum physics.
Like combining the two disciplines.
Right. Think about how a computer processor behaves when it overheats. It slows down, it drops frames, it struggles to maintain quantum states of information. Nakamura's method essentially measures the degradation rate of physical constants under extreme environmental stress, like the heat dome.
So he is measuring reality as if it is a CPU failing to maintain its clock speed. That is wild.
Yes.
So if you can measure the glitch on a subatomic level, you can potentially predict it. Or, much more terrifyingly, you can manipulate it. Which brings us to the final and undoubtedly the most complex piece of our deep dive today.
The transition from scientific measurement to governmental control.
Exactly. We are looking at an article titled, Supreme Court Expands Presidential Powers. Are Our Rights Just a Simulation? Now, I want to pause here. Before we jump into the deep end, we have to make something crystal clear to you listening.
Yes, very important point here.
We are absolutely not taking a political side here. We are not endorsing any viewpoints, left or right. We are bringing this up purely because it is a core structural component of the source material. We are simply trying to convey the ideas contained in the original text.
Right, because what's fascinating for us is how the Parallel Observer reframes these sweeping legal shifts entirely. They aren't looking at the Supreme Court through the lens of traditional partisan politics. They are looking at it purely as a mechanism of simulation control.
Which is such a wild concept. The logic presented in the text is startling in its pragmatism. The source suggests that there is a quiet, unacknowledged collusion occurring between the highest echelons of the legal sector and the tech sector.
Because normally when we read about the expansion of presidential powers or tightening surveillance laws, we view it through traditional frameworks, right? National security, domestic policy.
Keeping the country safe.
Exactly. But the source material flips that script completely. It suggests that these actions are being taken under the guise of national security, but the actual hidden motive is to maintain the structural integrity of the simulation itself.
Okay, walk us through the mechanics of that. How does expanding executive legal power maintain a computer simulation?
Well, it helps to pull all the threads together here. We have the systemic glitches causing smart thermostats to fail.
Right.
We have the psychological dread of a population suspecting they are programmed variables. We have artists mapping the digital cage, and scientists like Dr. Nakamura proving the cage exists with empirical data.
So people are starting to notice the cracks.
Exactly. What you have is a population that is slowly but surely waking up. The players inside the simulation are realizing they're in a simulation.
And if you are the administrator of that simulation, or if you are a government that has secretly discovered the true nature of reality, awakened population isn't just a political problem. It is a massive existential threat to the system.
Think of the legal system in this scenario, not as a protector of human rights or a mediator of justice, but as an antivirus software.
Oh, wow. Antivirus software.
Yeah. When a population starts waking up to the artificial nature of their reality, their unpredictable behavior becomes anomalous code. They become effectively malware, threatening to overload the server.
So the expanded surveillance laws act as a diagnostic scan, constantly monitoring the population, not for traditional criminal activity, but for, like, anomaly awareness.
Precisely. And the expansion of unilateral presidential powers acts as the quarantine zone.
Mm.
If you need to isolate infected files before they crash the entire system, you can't wait for congressional approval or a lengthy judicial review.
We don't have the time.
Right. You need the absolute authority to forcefully shut down populations that get too close to the truth. The expanded powers give the system administrator the ability to force quit unresponsive or dangerous programs.
The government is trying to keep the players under control before everyone realizes what's happening and the server completely crashes, framing the highest courts in the land as a desperate firewall designed to protect the simulation from human awareness is incredibly chilling.
It is the ultimate containment strategy. I mean, when the physical reality you govern is literally breaking down at the quantum level, the only way to maintain order is to tighten the rules of the cage.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today, and it is a lot to process. Let's just synthesize the journey this stack of sources took us on.
It's been quite a ride.
We started with the very tangible physical glitches, that historic July 1st heat dome and the smart thermostats failing on multiple networks right as the country tried to celebrate its 250th anniversary. We explored how those systemic failures cascade into a deep psychological dread. The collective anxiety that our climate and our history are just programmed variables breaking down under server load.
And from that point of physical and psychological friction, we examined how humanity attempts to cope. We saw the Phoenix creatives using their installations to physically recreate the glitches. They're giving us that necessary visual vocabulary to validate the dread we are feeling.
And finally, we tracked the narrative shift from subjective artistic expression to objective systemic control. We looked at Dr. Nakamura measuring the degradation of reality like an overheating CPU at Tokyo University. And then that chilling theory that the Supreme Court's expansion of powers is actually a desperate antivirus firewall attempting to keep a waking population contained.
It is a heavy, monumental journey.
It is heavy.
But it is crucial to point out to you listening the underlying message embedded in all of this reporting. Throughout the Parallel Observer's coverage, there is a distinct, undeniable undercurrent of hope.
A silver lining.
Yes. Because whether this simulation hypothesis is literal truth or simply a powerful modern metaphor for our current struggles, humanity is proving to be incredibly resilient. Even if we are existing in what the sources call a digital cage, people are pushing back against the bars.
They aren't just giving up.
No, they are making brilliant art, they are conducting groundbreaking science, they are asking massive, dangerous questions. The population is more awake than it has ever been.
The systemic friction is causing a spark. And moving forward, it is going to be absolutely vital to watch how this narrative plays out in real time, especially regarding Dr. Nakamura's anomaly detection method. The sources noted that in the coming weeks, they will be tracking how this scientific breakthrough begins to impact global markets.
That's going to be fascinating to watch.
Right. If institutional investors and algorithms start believing that the degradation of the simulation is a quantifiable, measurable metric, how on earth does Wall Street react to a glitch?
The economic implications of a measurable reality failure are entirely unprecedented. You are no longer hedging against crop failures or inflation. You're hedging against the fabric of space-time stuttering.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, there is one final thought we want to leave you with, something for you to mull over on your own. The sources spent a lot of time questioning the nature of that intense July heat wave and the thermostat failures. The prevailing hope was that the systemic stress was just a temporary system recalibration.
Right? Like a momentary lag while the servers caught up with the intense human activity of the holiday. A frightening experience, certainly, but ultimately a survivable event where the system eventually stabilizes.
But what if it wasn't temporary? If our reality is indeed a massive software program that just experienced a severe, stressful recalibration under the weight of human awareness?
Yeah.
What happens to us, the players in the game, if the system administrators decide that a simple recalibration isn't enough to fix the corrupted code? What happens if the system decides it is time for a hard reboot?
That remains the ultimate unknown. If the antivirus firewall fails, pulling the plug might be the only option left.
So the next time you are walking down that familiar street and the shadow falls just a little bit wrong or the traffic light blinks out of sequence,
Exactly.
you might not want to just shake your head, blame it on a lack of sleep, and smooth it over. You might want to pay very close attention to what the glitch is trying to tell you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Parallel Observer. Keep questioning the code.